don't want to make it awkward if it's just me and you and chat you. So what would you prefer?
You can just ask away if you want.
Okay. For question 1, I know in the lecture it says that we need to set our intercept to 0, but when I ran my regression 2 ways. I ran it with the intercept as the constant is 0, and I ran it with the intercept not as 0. And my regression results matched my trendline equation and R-squared value when it wasn't 0. And I guess because in the lecture you specifically say for production functions we want it to go through 0 through the origin. Like, I just want to make sure I'm doing it right.
Well, I'm not going to answer that question exactly, but I will say that if you want, I'll show you too. I'm just downloading some other stuff. That if you're saying you're getting a discrepancy between what you're seeing in your regression results and what you are seeing in your trend line, you can do, and if it's a matter of getting the regression you're doing to go through the origin, you can get your trend lines to do that too. You can force your trend lines to go through the origin too. Let me pull up this answer just so you can see the answers here. So like this one, I don't know if you can see my screen. So this was the practice problem, and I just this one I actually did the type of chart I did was the one that had the lines in it. So if I just did the dots without the lines,
right?
So I could do that, and if I said to put in, so when I did the regressions, you can see a bunch of regressions down here, and I think I'm pretty sure there's a video about this particular practice problem.
Okay.
But I did, you can sort of see on the right or the left-hand side of regressions, I let the regression itself decide what the intercept should be. So I didn't, again, if you run the regression, there's that thing about setting, what do they say? They call it the constant to 0, setting the constant to be 0.
Yeah, set your constant to 0.
Yeah. So for these regressions on the left, I did not select that option. So that Excel said, okay, well, since that option wasn't checked, then let me figure it out. For these ones on the right, I did tell it to the constant be 0. So you can do that with the regression, like you said. You can also do it with the trend lines too. You go up and you say you want to add a trend line to it, and then go to the more options. And this is kind of a curvy one, so I'll tell it to be a polynomial third. And you also have the option right here. I don't know if you can see it. It says set intercept, and you can actually set it to whatever you want. So you could set it to 0.
Oh, okay.
You could set it to some other value too if you wanted to. But since this one is, this is a production function, then I want it to set it to 0. So if I do that, and then I look at the equation, I can see that it is, so it does not have an intercept here. It's got the x cubed term, x squared term, and an x term. There's no intercept. If I did it and I switched it, and if I kept the show the equation there, if I uncheck that box, then it's trying to give me an intercept, even though it's really small in this case. But it does have a non-x term in here, which is the intercept. If you wanted to try to make things be consistent, you could say, well, not only can I run a regression where I set the intercept to be 0, but I can also have my trend line do it too.
Yeah, I was kind of, which I don't know if this is right, but I did my graph first. Obviously, that's the order you told us to do it in. And I was using my graph to kind of check my regression results. And that's what I guess I was missing is once I ran it, I was like, well, it looks like I shouldn't set it to 0, but I didn't know I could do that on the graph. I didn't know I could check constant to 0 there too, and kind of double check it there. So, okay.
Yeah. And if it was something like when we did some of the cost functions, this week? Yeah, estimation of production and cost. When we had cost functions, where we had, I don't know if I have any examples of them. Here we go. When we had a fixed cost, like the A on slide 7 here, so total cost equals this A term, plus b times q plus c times q squared, blah, blah, blah. The a was always a fixed cost. So if you were, I don't know if I have a decent enough set of practice problems like this. So here we go. So if I had a practice problem like this second one, where I've got quantity column and a total cost column, and I can see that my fixed costs are 5,000. If I went in to do my trend line, I didn't actually do it here. I mean, it explains it perfectly well because the r squared is 1. But you can even go in and say, if you're doing the trend line, you can even say, set my intercept to be 5,000. Because I just know that's what it's supposed to be. And it's going to give you the exact same equation. But that's kind of the nicer thing about the trend lines is that you can actually tell the intercept to be whatever you want it to. But a lot of times, we're specific to make it to be 0. But yeah, you have that option in the trend lines too.
Okay, perfect. Can you possibly point me in the direction for maybe, well, it would obviously be lecture 1, but for part D, I am not remembering right off the bat how to get MC using quantity and labor, and I feel like we've gone over that. I just can't remember where I should look, and I'm not really sure it's in this module, to be honest.
It's last week, actually. It's the.
Did you say last?
There was a discussion we had last week about the fact that last week was production and cost, and the question here, well, data that you're given, you collect the following production data, but yeah, part D is asking you what's happening to marginal cost. So there is a discussion last week where we talked about how you can talk about production and analyze production on its own and look at its graphs and see what it's doing. You can also look at cost and look at those cost curves separately. But those two terms are related to each other. I mean, those two concepts of production and cost are related to each other. So there was a bit of a discussion near the end of one of the lectures last week where we tried to talk about how these things are related.
Okay, good deal.
Mm-hmm.
My only other question was really for question 4 of the assignment. I think I feel confident in part A, but parts C through D are getting kind of muddy. And so I wanted to, I guess, again, ask, are there supplemental videos? I feel like I've looked through them, but I didn't know if there was like one that I should really focus in on. I know it's going to be in lecture 2, but looking through my notes and reviewing the lecture today, I didn't find the clarification I was looking for. And so, like, if you could just direct me a little more, that would be helpful, but I get it if you can. Because it's the test.
It's kind of the question 3 is more one of those conceptual type questions.
Right.
And 4 is going to be, getting your hands dirty with the graphs and the equations and everything. So if you kind of go back and walk through how we're solving all these problems as you go, you just kind of go down the slide and go, okay, well, if I'm trying to figure out what these perfectly competitive firms need to do, then I'll start at the first, slide number 2, and then I'll go to 3 and 4. So if you kind of go through like that and say, okay, well, this is what I'm getting from this slide, and I use that for this next one, and then I take the information from there and I go to the next one. That might help a little bit. So a lot of people kind of get hung up on it. But once I tell people, step back for a second, look over what the question is asking you, hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. And there may be, let me see, there probably is videos about it. Let me see. It's been a while since I've made these videos. There's video 6, tips for assignment 5. Are you driving right now?
My husband's driving.
Okay. It sounded like car sound. I didn't want you to be working on your assignment while you're trying to steer.
I figured the background noise was probably bad. Sorry.
I can't advocate driving and doing homework assignments at the same time.
Well, I did some of it earlier, and then I took a break to eat dinner with his family, and so I meant to be back home by now, but obviously you see that didn't happen. So anyway.
Yeah, so just kind of an application of the major ideas of this this chapter. So like the first half of the set of slides where you're figuring out how these firms decide what they want to do, what prices they want to charge, and what quantities they want to set.
I gotcha. Okay. Okay, well, those were really the only things that I felt like I was hung up on, but I guess other than that, I should be good to go. So thanks for still having a Zoom session.
Sure.